So, let me go ahead and turn that off. Hello, world. Is me, I is him. Don't have no brim on, but not so slim either. Ryan, aka Crownson's Corner. This is the Healing Chefs podcast. Today's awesome guest, we do have Jake, JetworkNYC. We have Nelson, Poetry of Plants. Oh my God, everybody, calm down, huh? So,
It's like a game show.
yeah, bro. We're excited. Yeah.
Thanks for
We
having
get
us.
paid very little for that. Um, so thank you guys very much. I know you guys have been very busy. There's been a lot of stuff going on in the Arizona community. We'll try to avoid some of that, a lot of that. But you guys are thinking about coming out here. But let's for the people that don't know who you are, which I don't know who that is, but anybody that watches or listens to us, could you please introduce yourselves and what it is that you do?
Go ahead, Jake.
Oh man, that's not fair. Okay, fine. I'm Jake. Jetwork NYC. I do whatever I need to do, whatever needs to be done. I work with a lot of brands. Work with as a liaison between the cultivations and the logistics and the regulators and the brands and the culture and all that good stuff, and support people like Nelson here.
Running businesses and being an all-out networking fiend.
Yes, that very true.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good at what he does. And for yourself, Nelson, Poetry of Plants.
I've been in the cannabis space for 20 years now. Started out how everyone starts out, and then moved into growing once I moved to LA in 2005. And I was in Prop 215 era, where it's like the medical shops, things were getting raided one minute, next minute everything be fine. At one point in LA, I think there was like more dispensaries than Starbucks and every fast food restaurant combined. So I've kind of been through quite a bit, but I was pretty low key working in the space when I started, and then I took a break for like a year and a half, 2 years, and then came back into it and started a consultancy that was focused on startup design, a lot to do with like efficiency, LED lighting. So that would be like when I kind of came on the map as far as visibility wise. I was like one of the first guys running full spectrum LED lights, which had some benefits, but most people, and still to this day, were a little hesitant on switching over from high pressure sodium. And then I've just developed
there's a lot of back and forth with that.
Yeah, we can touch on that if we want.
We're gonna do a whole special episode. We're not gonna really follow the same lining out that I normally do with the different segments, because like you and I talked, Nelson, about you explaining to us what takes things from mids to great and whatnot and so on and so forth. But before that, I know you guys are coming out here to Arizona and you've been tapping into the different people out here and and stuff like that. And I really applaud your guys' effort to get a pulse on what's going on in our community. And I've told you, some information about different things and stuff like that, and I'm sure other people have too. But also, I really appreciate the way that you've handled these different things. Like you've not taken anything too serious, and like I've told you, just because this is my experience with these people may not be your experience with people, and I'm glad that we kind of are opening up more and more communication, because you kind of had me reflect on a little bit of my own.
Awesome.
So.
And just to touch on that real quick, I think that and what I've been doing for the last year has been going into different markets to just understand what's going on, because you can kind of get stuck in California is like a weird eight-legged octopus as far as what's going on here. So there's all these different things happening. It's a kind of its own country, but it influences a lot. But yet you have these other cannabis cultures. Like every state program is kind of like its own island, and then you have people that participate in that, whether they're operators or consumers, And overall, like the loudest thing I hear is like people just aren't happy about their programs or the quality that they're getting, or they would like to get more for what they pay for. And I think there's some reasons why that is, and I think it's important to understand what those things are so we can fix them. But overall, in Arizona is a very unique market. It's got some weird little things going on with it. That's just how the laws were written, the regs were written.
Yeah, the
But
licensing.
yeah, the licensing and the way that the ATOs work, and how there's like these original sets of licenses, and then there's social equity licenses, and then there's this whole group of people that like lease ATOs so you can operate under their license. So when I got there, I was trying to figure out just like how it all worked, because I would go to like a few grows and find out that they were all kind of connected to the same license in some way or another, but they were completely separate
Right.
groups. There was different kinds of structures as far as like the growers working there. There were some growers that were just an employee, and then some growers like were contractors where they covered the cost of everything, but they didn't hold the license and they didn't own the business. And throughout all that, I saw a lot of people that were trying to like still do the best they can and create a quality product, and had a lot of pride behind what they were doing, which to me is like the fundamental, most important thing that we have to cultivate in all these spaces, is supporting the growers and the people that want to do good work in the space. And that's how I met Jake too. Is like when Jake and I met, like we've been in the DM and chatting for a while, but a little over a year ago, the conversation started on how to improve things. And he just has, I'm like 42 now. Jake's 10 years younger than me, so Jake's got a little bit more gas in his tank to, I'm still out there doing all of it, but this man, they call him Jet for a reason.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
and I
seen-
just saw like a lot of relationships he was building, kind of putting things together, and that's how this whole Arizona thing happened, right? So I got an opportunity to do, some branding and some licensing of some genetics, and then that situation ended up falling apart. But in the falling apart, I got to understand what was going on, like how it all worked, which I was like, wow, this is really convoluted and complicated and challenging.
Oh yeah.
And I just, for me, I'm like, I just want to come up to Arizona, meet people, and see what's going on, just to understand it a little bit better. And it was a good trip.
I think it's good too. Sorry, go ahead, Jake.
Oh well, no. I just wanted to off the heels of that. I wanted to say that Nelson comes into one thing that really resonated with me, and then this is for every state, but Nelson comes in like a tourist, and that's important. Meaning, like, what's the word? Like, if you're going to a foreign country, you want to come in like it's not your culture, because it's not. And so I'd never really seen someone go in like in that way, and that's really like wanting to know about what's going on there specifically. And I had always gone into these other states like reg first, right? So it's like, I'm not going to show up in your state unless I've read and understand those regulations, but that's only part of it. So and you can learn it a lot faster. So I was very blessed. It was definitely an excellent trip.
Yeah, and I think it's great because with your handling of the community and whatnot, it shows that you care not just about profits or anything. You actually care about the plant and what it brings. Because I go ahead.
I was just kidding.
But
Well, and if I can speak on that too, it just doesn't work the other way. Like people, like what I've seen is a lot of people from California go to these other markets, and they kind of like, maybe they make a lot of money, but they kind of leave things worse than what they were. And what I would like to do, like wherever I go, is to be in service to whatever that market is, how to make it better. Reputation is everything. And if there isn't like an opportunity that doesn't make sense, then let's figure out how to create an environment where there's more opportunity, where things can make more sense. And I'd rather put my attention and energy towards that for free. It's like why go into a sick market and try and capitalize off that? I think that's just a bad play. There's a ton of opportunity in the space. A lot of people are kind of down and out because we've seen a lot of people go out of business, but that was because they came into it the wrong way. And we can talk about that, for like 10 hours on like what those fail points are. I mean, people get kind of like they turn into Gollum from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
They see a shiny object and they think that's it. But no, this is like a real business. It's really hard. Growing indoors is really hard. Um, and there's a lot of bad ideas in the space, and there's a lot of people that have kind of like capitalized off of it. There's a lot of double dipping. There's a lot of corruption. So the way, I used to be really upset about all that, and shit post on stories and things that were kind of heightening or elevating that corruption. But now at this point, it's just like, let's just go create something that feels good and that isn't corrupt, and see where that fits. That could be in California, working on getting a licensed micro grow here. Or it could be in another state, helping and being in service to another company or another group. I don't know. For me, it's just like, exploring at this point, just to figure out what the hell is going on in all these
Yeah.
other markets.
Well, and there's some like really good brands out here that have some good genetics and stuff like that, and maybe if with the right handling and stuff, like maybe it could be even better. Like I was talking to you about high grade.
Yep.
Like back in the day when high grade was like was one of the best and this is controversial, BHOs. Like we were all buying all that stuff up and everything, but over time, like opinion has been like maybe it's mids or whatever on some stuff, but they got the tiki genetics now and stuff, and I've heard a lot of really good things. I haven't gone back to them, but I think with you guys coming in and showing your care and your knowledge and stuff, I think they could get to that really top level and stuff
And,
like that. So
and
that
that
excites me, and that's why I was like, maybe I need to not be so you know aggressive on my stance with things, like with myself. Like I've changed and stuff like that. Why can't I allow other people to change and get better and stuff too? So
well,
you
let,
guys, it's
let me
great.
speak.
Like,
Let me speak on that. Let me speak on that because you just touched on something that's really important. So, like in sales, right? The number one first thing you want to do is establish trust. So, if there's a brand that establishes trust and then they break it, it's tough to rebuild that. So they have to tell their story on where they came. I don't want to be the one to tell their story. I could touch on a few things specifically, but one of the things I'll touch on is like the guys that are running that ship there. They're great. They care, and they know where they're focused on, making those improvements. I got to see things coming down off the line. I thought it was great. Thought it was fantastic. Um, they're young. They're a young leadership team too. They're a young group of guys, and everyone. There's just not a ton of room for error in this space because this space is so exclusive. That's the other thing. It's not like anybody can go just start up a grow and compete with high grade or anybody else because you've got all these hoops to jump through. You got to sell yourself a little bit. And sell out a little bit to some of these systemic things that are there, and that's just a game that's being played if you want to participate in that world. But as a consumer, I can understand how it feels when you buy a product, you're not happy with it. Cannabis isn't cheap, especially people here are like, money's tighter now. It's not like it was like the COVID money where everyone had all this loot. And it's like they get a bad eighth, no big deal. That might be the only eighth that they can afford that month.
Yeah,
So
they
that
bought
really,
like four that they came in and bought an ounce anyway.
yeah, yeah. So it's just, so I understand like, and there's been a problem overall in the industry with cultivators not being connected to consumer value, where you've got the distro in some states, then you've got the retail, and then they get the product. And a lot of times that product lands at the consumer. Like I went in, there was a grow that we went and visited that I thought they did phenomenal work. So I'm like, let me go to the dispensary and buy an eighth. I bought an eighth, and that shit was packaged and harvested in July. And it's like that's unacceptable. That's old weed. That's bargain bin at that point. Like you can't expect $55 if it was harvested 6 or 7 months ago. I mean,
Sure.
Cannabis needs to be fresh, and that also goes.
That's a big problem out. Yeah.
So that's a big problem. Part of that problem is that there's been a ton of oversupply produced in Arizona because too many. Go ahead.
The transparency really, like there's testing and everything,
Yeah.
and all sorts of stuff, but the transparency on when things are harvested and stuff. That stuff isn't told to the consumer. It's like on the
Well,
back of something.
the consumer has to ask for it, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the thing.
Which
So
is
if we educate the consumer on those value points so they know what to look for, then those companies that are making the decision to put something out at the top shelf dollar, but was harvested 7 months ago, they'll make those
right.
adjustments because it won't sell.
Make an educated purchase. Yeah.
You know, and so the part of the issue is the whole ecosystem around Arizona is it's a limited grower environment, but then you've got people that can kind of lease out these licenses, and then you have all these grows. So there's been a ton of overproduction, and then a ton of like old and low quality flower hit the market, which then depresses the value of things that are good. And then so it has a chain. When you have oversaturation, you have a chain lightning chain effect on everything else, and those people that are leasing out those licenses, they're getting paid no matter what.
So
For them, it's easy money. Go
Makes
ahead,
sense.
Jake. Start.
I have to draw attention to that one part because that's absolutely the case. So Nelson and I talk about this a lot, which is equity, and I mean that in the sense of you need to feel like you're working. If your business doesn't work, it doesn't work for me. You know what I'm saying? Like meaning it's like I don't. It's like a brand. If a brand is not interested in their own longevity, like they're not interested in my longevity, that's a problem because like I'm certainly interested in theirs. You know what I mean? So it's like it breeds that setting it up that way. I'm not even claiming this was done in a malicious way because I don't even think they could have really known that would be the case. But it essentially it's like I don't care who rents from my apartment. It's on Airbnb. Next person's going to be just fine with it. So that kind of in my own existential way is problematic. It's like you want your landlord to be rooting for you as opposed to like just collecting the check.
It's like commissaries or like ghost kitchens and whatnot. Like they're the landlord's getting paid for sure, whether your DoorDash business works or not. So yeah, no, that's absolutely great point.
And add this, Jake and I are chronic interrupters. Forgive us. We both.
Oh, run it.
You're gonna get it.
I talk too much.
No, you're good. To add to that too is just like because that structure is in place, it's not going to work forever, and that's the other thing. So even though these people can rent out their ATOs and get more grows going or however the structure is, that they might be making that money short term, and a lot of people are trying to get the money while the speculative value is there. But that speculative value is going to go away because the eighth prices and the value of cannabis in Arizona has gone down. It's like it's
gone away.
So it's like you can see there's like kind of an average price range of what people will pay. And it's like what it is in California. So it hits this oversaturation point. And then you need to look at like states like Oregon. Like Oregon had a full collapse. And so many good people went out of business just because there was such an oversupply. So there really should be.
I don't know the prices there for sure. But yeah, right here, 45 is about what people want.
45 is what people want. In Oregon, they couldn't even give it away. Is what happened. There was so much oversupply. So what you guys have in Arizona is you've got handful of big grows that kind of they're sinking ships. They're going out of business, and they liquidate all their inventory at like 1/3 of what the market value is currently for Arizona. Now, market value per pound, wholesale bulk, it's going to land between $800 and like $1,400 a pound. And this is like what it is in California. And this is where it should be in Arizona. In Arizona, it's like $400 to $650. So they're taking a huge L on that bulk flower, and then that goes into a brand, and then so it's not good.
Days, 300, 3,000 of
3,000. Yeah. No, that's So if someone's dumping all their inventory at like 400 to 650 a pound, that means that they're taking in that state with the cost that it takes to have the grow there. They're probably taking like $1,000 loss in each unit, and they're just trying to recoup some of their money that they've put in, or things are kind of falling apart, and people are trying to pay themselves while they're exiting out the door. So I get that, but when you have thousands of pounds into a market that really just doesn't have that big of a market, what do you guys have? Like 120 stores. I think I'm trying to figure out how many pounds are sold on the rec and medical market combined.
Well, this
I've
is
got
why when you show up to like Meta, these like different events and stuff, there's so many brand new different vape brands and concentrate brands and infused joint brands and stuff because
yeah,
that's they're dealing with all of that loss. Those are
But
the byproducts.
100%, and it's also
The baloney of the weed industry.
correct, and it's bad if if you've got a brand that you want to take into other states, because if you have you can have an oversaturation of brands too, and then everyone's just competing, for putting out the cheapest product at that
it's a
point.
race to the bottom. So that's exactly
Yeah.
from our business plan, which is being different via that. And it goes back to what we said in the very beginning. It's so not about the money. I wish it was just about the money. It would be easier. You know what I mean? And it's like so there can be oversaturation of brands, sure, but there won't be oversaturation of quality for quite some time. And I think there's something to hold to that. Not overproducing. Not trying to be everything, not doing too much.
Yeah. There's been quite a few brands that been out here and have nailed it, but then they scale, and it kind of and that really and I love these people too. Don't get me wrong, I love these people, but they scale, and then the kind of quality goes down, or if it's not the quality, it's like the interactions or the and stuff like that, and then the community somehow gets word about it, and then we all get all riled up and like, well, we don't, and then it gets all convoluted. It gets so convoluted, and you got to sit back and be like, okay, why, yeah.
That's kind of the problem with business in America in general. It's like once you get to a point where like middle management starts having all the visibility, and the leadership of the company doesn't understand how the people that are starting, the starting floor of the company understand their experience. Like it's just, for me, like my ethos is that like there's like a breaking point for when a company should stop growing, or grow in different ways, but not growing to the point where you lose connection of the culture of your own company. And I mean, there was one company that I went and got to see, and that was Grow Science, and I was like, I think they had like 120 or 140 employees, and I was shocked at how high the vibe was there, because usually when I visit tour companies that have that many employees, it's visible that people aren't happy, but everyone at that company seemed to be pretty stoked. So for better or worse, no matter how people feel about Grow Science, I did experience something there that I thought was really, really unique and special and worth modeling. And I think it's important that even if like there's a company that is doing something, they could improve in some areas, but if they're nailing one thing, we got to highlight that and try and absorb that into everything that we're doing. Like, it's just an example. Like, this is an example. Like, I didn't feel genuinely that people were faking it when I was on that tour. I've gotten that before.
No, I've been like, what people don't know is Matt and them at Grow Science have bought at least $1,000 worth of my edibles.
Oh, excellent. Yeah.
So like I am very versed in Grow Sciences and whatnot. And every time I've been there, everyone that works there loves it there. There have been things that come up and stuff like that. And the more that I grow older and stuff, and it's harder for me. I am different. I'm a veteran with PTSD. Like over time, I'm starting to like let people like kind of make their changes, because I mean I'm asking to people to let me make mine. And it's always been a positive thing there. I've been trying to talk to Matt to get him on the podcast for a long time, but Matt and I have also had different interactions before, and it's probably a little bit more on my fault because of my PTSD and my aggressive reactions. But no, you're spot on. Every time I even been there, I trimmed for him at one point in time too. Everyone that was there was super happy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's different than in California.
Oh yeah, because when I worked for Alien Labs out here, the Cali people would come out and like we were like high fiving each other out the door at Alien Labs, and they're like, "What the is this?"
I know there's a
you guys usually hate each other.
Yeah, in California,
like what?
Most there are a few situations. You have a few companies that are nailing it. We're trying to do it with Highline. We've got a great team at Highline, which is the nursery I work with. The vibe there is pretty strong, but like I'm taking things from these other companies just to understand the leadership style on like those things that we can do to make it better. But in general, like in California, there's like an overall sentiment that people are just not happy working for these companies. And there's also just been a ton of fuckery in this space, and it's like
Eh,
where I've been
in the
able to.
dispensaries, there's a lot of fuckery because I was a bud tender for a while and I was making like good money, and then once they start doing the tip sharing and stuff like that, I stopped being a bud tender because I'm like, you're stealing my money.
Yeah,
Like, knowledge
because
means
you're the one. Yeah,
I
yeah.
yeah,
think that if we, hold up the people who are, it's kind of like an athlete playing a good or bad game. It's like I think that it's important that we, as a group, as a company, as a culture, as an industry, what have you, there's not a lot of post gaming. Like there's not a lot of like,
yeah.
hey, let's talk about this, how this went, how we can do better. What went well, what went fucking poorly. And in this space, in every space, it's not just cannabis. It's far from just cannabis. I mean, it's
That's army stuff after AAR, after action review.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And it's sort of like we love as humans to kind of like have this Schadenfreude. We love to be like, oh, this person tripped, like. But the reality is, if we, it's like constructive criticism, like when they used to teach that concept, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a
Well,
good.
it's a big ask because like people get engagement online by posting things that are like hyper emotional or upset. Like I know this very well. It's like I've
Yeah.
built probably half my followers from like making funny memes that would like piss off a third of the people and then make the other 2/3 laugh. But overall, I've stopped kind of doing that because it's just not healthy. It doesn't go anywhere. And when people have hit me up, if they haven't been happy about some of my products or services, if they give me a chance to correct it, I'm gonna make that right. But
End
if
of the
someone's
day,
just jumping in to like rip me apart, it's a lot more time and energy for me to like, which I do because I have the time to do it. I don't think Matt would have to have the time to do it because that man is fucking busy. But to take the time to kind of like understand what that person is saying and then how to better serve their need and get to the root of it all, right? But most of what happens is someone's like pissed off and then they get in someone's DM or they put, an aggressive comment out there. People's response now is like, fuck that guy. Like, I don't give a fuck. And that's just kind of broken down the opportunity for there to be like a teaching moment for the business owner and for the customer. So,
Yeah, I mean, there's just different people, not just Matt, that aren't accessible to be able to have those conversations.
so there's a need. So that there needs to
So
be
they,
more of that. Yeah.
so like what I'm trying to do on the 27th out here at Exhale Society is have people sit down. I even told people if you have any issues with me and want to be an adult, come sit down and let's talk about it. Let's bring some healing to the community and work some of this shit out. Because working against each other is not going to get us to be any better. It's just not. It's just not.
No, there needs to be a collaborative effort to improve
It should be
things
us versus the
overall.
government, to be honest.
I kind
That's
of feel
how.
that. Well, we kind of have to also work with the government to some extent because they're
Well,
the
I
they're
mean,
this they're this. Well, no, hear me out.
yeah,
They're the silent partner in all these grows, right? They're a silent partner. So
well, maybe not so silent in some.
yeah, well, I mean, you can look at like something that like what Elliot Lewis is doing from Catalyst here. Like he's taking like a scorched earth very aggressive approach to try and push back against some of the fraud that the states enacted around the taxation structure, right? The states usually pretty much stolen billions from the consumers, and he's figured out a way around it, but he's been very aggressive with that. Now, I've been in situations where I've been able to work with local city officials and regulators because they just don't know. Like this is a pretty new industry. They don't understand why things don't make sense. So I have to assume that they don't understand. Like if I go in and understand, like assume ignorance over malintent, like a lot of the people they just don't get it. And then maybe you'll walk into somebody that does have the malintent, and that's the person that you would really want to take out of office or out of a position of power.
Well, yeah,
But
they got stuff going on right now that they're trying to police the already policed Instagram in Arizona for these brands that advertising and whatnot.
yeah, so understanding why that is, and then making a calm, rational argument against it, and then using all the marketing around that argument, that can be just as effective without there being as much animosity. Because at the end of the day, all these people that are in the government, they are just like us. They just work for the government. They are just people. They are just people, and we kind of look at this us versus them mentality. But if you can speak to them in the right way, they're going to hear you, and then they can become an ally, and then you can start shifting things that make sense. But if it just is us versus them all the time, they're going to say "fuck you" too.
Right.
And then we
screaming at people, they're not going to listen to you.
Yeah.
I agree.
So, it's more about finesse than brute force, and that's kind of And I've been able to.
That's part of my issue. Like I'm more.
Well, hear me.
I know brute force way better.
Well, it requires patience. It requires a lot of patience and willpower. And I can give you an example, like the city that I have the micro license in. I was able to make an argument, and then I was able to bring people in to help me make that argument, because they called me up and said 90% of the cannabis companies in our area, they're not renewing their license. Do you know what's going on? And I'm like, yeah, your taxes are too high. Right? Like, this doesn't make sense. And let me actually break open the Google Sheets and go over this with you, so you understand that there is no money that the money that you think is in the space is no longer in the space. So my advice is, why don't you reduce those taxes significantly? Well, we got our taxes reduced 70%, and it took like 6 months to get there. But now if I call them, they pick up the phone, and they usually have another question that I can answer for them and influence their trajectory. I mean, if we want to talk about what it is to really be an influencer, it's better to be an influencer instead of just consumer behavior, but influencing the actual market itself, right? And that comes through finesse and communication.
I tried to explain that through someone who is upset about some marketing strategy of saying 6-star and stuff. I'm like, you're upset at people, at brands for saying this kind of stuff, but what you need to be doing is educating the market on what a 6-star is, if it isn't a 6-star, and then the consumer can make that decision and whatnot. That if they don't know, then they don't know.
Could I just give a quick point to what Nelson was just saying, which is that I completely agree with it, and B, you would be amazed at the amount of people that want help with their job, aka regulators. The reality is, it's not an us versus them. In fact, it's a taking the time to do anything at all. 80% of people are not going to even show up. When I'm on New York State, OCM, the Office of Cannabis Management, or I'm on the New Jersey CRC website, there's at every turn, there's a section. It's like, do you want to submit a comment right now about this? Do you see something? And you know what? I do. I often am like, yeah, this is whatever. I don't really love this. This is confusing. Dude, I'm telling you, that is so few people interacting with them that they're they almost are oh, word, and they engage you more. And it's just they don't like walking around thinking, kind of like with the cops, right? If they're getting spat at and this and that, you can't really blame them for, not being super cool.
Yeah. And to add to that too, there is a benefit to undermine these state programs for some groups. Right. So there are still very large organized groups that
and just to be clear, I meant big government hiding shit from us. I didn't
No, I know, but
you need to work with them. I talked to other people, and especially lady in Normal out here, president out of Normal out here, quite a bit. But yeah, no, I absolutely got to work with the lawmakers and the
but
stuff. I'm just saying. I was just saying it's
definitely not all.
No, I get you, but you have to understand. You have to understand the root cause of why the government gets to that place where they reinforce the us versus them by hiding things and not serving the government's supposed to serve the people. I think we can all say that doesn't really feel like what's going on anymore. It feels like the government has created a bubble.
I was a sergeant in the Army. I know how that operates very well. It's very, very much for itself and all about,
Correct. So, but how do you change that, right?
From the small part to the people that we're talking about right now.
That's how, but so the thing is, if we start categorizing everybody that way, then we lose the opportunity to actually shift it. I mean, if we look at where anyone has kind of changed the government, they started at the lowest level and then worked their way up. And now I can tell you right now, there are friends of mine now that are in the weed space. that have been activists and been online and, taken down corrupt companies, some of the things that we've done just as far as putting visibility out on specific companies, they've now completely scrubbed their internet profile completely and they're running for local office so they can actually make those changes.
Oh
And
yeah,
these are weed growers that are now getting involved at that level.
that's
And, and people won't even remember their old life. And I think that they're, the two guys I know about, I think they are going to get elected. And so if we can start understanding, people that are equipped and willing to do that, like they should participate. My participation level is like, I'm a businessman, but I'm also going to talk to the people of the states and understand what's going on. And then I'm going to create an opportunity to sell them a better way or to highlight where things don't make sense and why that's going to cause some degree of ethical fading within the system that's going to end up corrupting and breaking apart their revenue stream. Right? Like what you're doing right now is going to, like, you guys want taxes. We understand that. Can we make the taxes reasonable? Because if the taxes aren't unreasonable, X, Y, and Z are going to occur, and then you're going to get no more taxes. And then we're going to go back to a police state. And I think we've all decided that we don't want to do that anymore. So that's kind of the fundamental backbone of kind of why I have these conversations. And then and all across the board, even from like making it easier for the cultivator to do their job, because a lot of these regulations are like arduous. They don't make a lot of sense. They don't really they're not matching like health safety regulations. They're just like superfluous regulations that are put on there because someone wrote that because they didn't understand. And then a lot of things were taken from the Canadian licensing program. Like for hemp, the Delta 9 limitation was taken from one person that decided that 0.3%, anything above 0.3% was going to be psychoactive. Canada put that in the law. And then when they were writing the farm bill, the authors of the farm bill just took that one guy's perspective and put it on, and it's crippled the hemp industry. Because no matter what, if there's any THC in a plant, you could concentrate that and make that psychoactive. So I think at the end of the day, it just depends on what the end use of the crop is and where that falls into compliance. And most of it's going into, most of the hemp guys are just, providing it for textiles or CBD. So if the end result is the THC gets destroyed, who cares how much THC is in the crop? That's how, so these things just don't make any sense because someone who didn't understand anything made the law. And that's most of the time what's going on. So you can come in and make those changes. And I've seen it happen. I've been a part of making it happen. So if you're not happy about something, figure out a better argument. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I just sat with over the past few days. I'm like, I'm upset at a lot of people, but me just sitting being upset don't do a damn thing. So why don't you actually go do something? But with that, we were talking about how you were going to educate us on how taking things from, and I don't want to beat anybody over the head, but just saying taking maybe a middle lane product to a higher product by just changing. I don't know, maybe changing the lighting. Were you talking about? I don't know.
Yeah. So I think the big issue with Arizona, of course, is how dry it is there.
Yeah.
Right. So the key thing that could kill a crop in Arizona is going to be their dry and their post processing.
The cure.
Well, I don't believe in curing anymore. I think that's kind of bullshit.
Okay.
I think that because I got gamed up by a meat and cheese guy that does curing for that whole industry, or the drying, or their curing is their drying. But I would look at cure. What's that?
Drying is curing.
Yes, I would say that drying is curing. That's the same thing. And then there's some things that do better with a longer dry or a longer cure, if we're going to call it that. And then there's some things like candy strains where you want to sell those as quickly as possible, because the longer that plant is exposed to the outside or ambient air, all those plant esters, all those aromatics, all the
volatile ones are going to
those just evaporate, right?
Yeah.
So you lose them very quickly. And if it's drier, you're going to lose them way quicker. So that would be the one thing. And I would say shout out to Nature Med, and then George Root.
Hell yeah, Halo. George Root. Halo Cannabis.
Yeah, they have got it down, as far as the quality. Did we lose Jake? We just lost Jake.
We lost Jake.
That's all right. So those guys, I'll talk. Those guys have got it down as far as the end, what was in the end product. Now, even if it's just sitting on the shelf. So this is the thing. I look at what's, Nature Med, they're doing it right. Georgia's doing it right, but there's a degree of humidification in the air that's going on. So a lot of people in Arizona wouldn't think this, but you probably need to put humidifiers in your dry room. And that would be something that people don't, so you don't get that too quick of a dry. So I would be looking, the first thing I would do to solve the number one problem in Arizona is to be looking at like the humidity content of the dispensaries, the humidity content of where the product was stored, not just the temperature, but also the humidity, because most of these packaging is not completely environmentally sealed, especially if you're in a jar. Mylars are actually far better for that, whether you like jars or Mylars, but Mylars are going to be more sealed. And so that would be the number one.
A lot of people don't actually seal the Mylars out here.
Really?
Yeah, it's actually just like just the Ziploc. I bought so many Mylars, and I'm just like that's
not sealed.
That's not sealed.
Well, you could, but in an environment like the one you're in, I would make sure that whatever is in that bag was probably at like 12 to 13% moisture content, factoring in that there's going to be some moisture loss along the way, unless it was a super sealed bag. So that would be the one thing that I think is kind of causing a problem. And then I would make sure that the dispensaries have humidity control. Like those dispos, like the doors are open, you got 0% relative humidity. That's going to get into wherever they're storing that product. And then if that product sits there for a month or two, you're going to lose like big value points off that product. So I would say that would be the number one issue. I would, and we didn't go to a lot of grows where, I went to a handful of grows, but everyone there was a pretty good cultivator.
Yeah. Sorry, real quick. Damn. He's not on. He's back though. We got Jake back. Yeah. No, absolutely. Cannabis, grapes, all that kind of stuff. Terroir is a big thing. Me being a chef and whatnot. That's why, we, for the most part, in Arizona, have been not as blown away by a lot of Cali brands that come out here, because it is a completely different environment, and we're not really getting Cali weed in Arizona. But I mean, I'm glad that people are trying, for sure, because obviously if you don't try anything, it ain't going to get anywhere. But do you guys have plans to come in and actually help out some of these grows, or?
We're open to it, but like I don't have anything planned out. At this point, it's just meet people, and if they need help and I can help them, great. And if there's space in the market for me to participate and bring some genetics in, great. But at this point, we're just basically looking at just meeting people, figuring out where. Right now the market's pretty saturated. I don't know. Don't hold me on this, but I don't know if it's the best move to come in and try and put a bag and a genetic in there unless the cultivation's dialed in. And okay. The guys that have it dialed in, they're successful. They don't need that, right? So a lot of times the people that do need that bump in revenue, it's because their flower isn't selling already. If their flower isn't selling already, then there's another problem that needs to be dealt with. And doing that kind of a lift requires a lot of power and control in those operations, and that can be really difficult because you've got people that are responsible for those things that may or may not be delivering, and then you end up coming in there, you're kind of like the asshole that's fixing shit, and that can rub people the wrong way. So there's all these political dynamics. I would love to set up like 50 lights in every state and just do a 50 lighter in every state and just do small batch, have 4 small rooms, and just that's like kind of like would be what I'd love to be able to do. And there's enough cultivators here in California that are looking for a cool opportunity to get out of the factory farming and back to like the craft. So, but it just depends on whether or not the market it's the right fit for the market and for the people. At this point, I just want to
do a collab with fish and grow some.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, at this point, I just want to like vibe out with the people in Arizona, because we met so many great people.
Yeah, and, I'm tired of the different drama. That's why I hope that like we can like settle some bunch of different things and stuff, and we can all start working together, because there's a lot of great ideas and stuff. And even last year when I first started this podcast and stuff, I really wanted to work with a lot of these people. And drama happened and whatnot, but at the end of the day, it's all bullshit and stupid anyway. So like, I want to get towards the plant and like.
And the way forward that might be just going to Arizona, going to these other states and throwing some events,
Yeah.
and just like creating a good time and then see what comes out of it. But I also know that, like look at what happened in New York. Like the New York market was kind of decimated by California, product and people from California. The last thing I would ever want to do is come into a market and have it feel like it was exploitive, because that's that's what the MSOs kind of do, and it's like, no,
that was
like
something I wanted to ask you about. Like the MSOs and the licensing. A lot of people don't really understand how that works. But it's pretty much different, like franchising.
yeah.
So that's really hard to do. This isn't McDonald's. It's a living, breathing plant that not full of. So it's hard to like replicate.
And if you want to grow in Arizona, you've got to pay a pretty significant amount of money to somebody that has a license, right? Just to be able to operate under that license.
Yeah, shoot, I was trying to make my edible brand a long time ago, and walking into every meeting about how much it was going to cost and stuff like that, just to rent out the license before I did any other like testing and anything else. So yeah, it's insane.
So it makes it hard for people with a little bit of money to come in and perform. You need to have a lot of capital. So you need to have a lot of capital, and you need to have relationships with capital, which kind of then gets you into, one sort of investment group, which, cannot, there just doesn't end up being a lot of margin left. When you start looking at it, it's like, can you do this and actually make a living? I mean, yeah, but if the consumers are expecting a high quality $35 eighth, not really. I mean, you're working off like a 10 to 20% margin, and that's what I'm trying to say is that like that's kind of how every business is to some extent. Like that's the bottom end margin where you can be profitable and continue to do it. So the system there, the way it's set up is definitely kind of funky, and it makes it hard. And now you have oversaturation of product, and you're going to have waves of ups and downs with that, where things correct themselves. And then, like I put online, you've got grows that have like a massive amount of canopy, over an acre of indoor canopy, that are coming online, and very complicated facility. Shout out things. I'm glad I got the tour because it was like quite a sight to see. But it's going to be very difficult to operate and produce quality out of that facility. I'm not going to name their name.
Just trying to be vague? Was that the vertically like the tiered kind of thing?
That was the big, there was like 6-tier veg and then 4-tier flower, and I hope if they pull it off, I'm going to be really impressed. But what does that mean? That means when they get operational, there's going to be some learning curves. They still got to move that product, which means there's going to be more middling quality product hitting the market, depreciating the value of everything else, which is not good.
A lot of us saw that, and good luck to them. I wish everybody good luck, but that I like immediately some of the growers that I talked to were like, so this top stuff isn't going to get as much love, or I don't know, maybe if you just ran all veg, I don't know, man.
My understanding is they're going to pay people significantly more to work on the top levels. Yeah. So if you want to work that way, you'd be at a different. So I mean, maybe that'll work.
I mean, obviously they have a plan. I mean, they're not just like, well, here's a building, so figure it out. But yeah,
well, to be fair, not to them, but I do know a lot of people that were like, well, here's a building.
Then again, that's kind of how I started this podcast.
Yeah, that's kind of how we all start to some extent. But I'm just I just don't know how many grows, because this is the other thing too. To build out a grow and get it licensed can take years. So they've invested a lot. They probably started building out. My guess is like first or second year of COVID, because we had this, all of a sudden weed became an essential service, and pounds went up significantly in price, like over 2x of where they're at right now. So everyone got lost in the sauce, got Gollum with the ring, right? They're like, oh my God, it's going to last forever. So you had all this investment capital come in, and then a lot of building. The same thing happened in California. So as much as that we've had a lot of businesses go under in the last couple of years, we also have a lot of businesses that started building before that before that oversaturation point happened.
Is that
And they have to finish building. Like I've seen some grows out here in California that were acres of indoor that haven't been turned on yet. And it's like, well, the retail market's kind of reached its saturation point. We know this because Verbal going out of business was a large distributor that couldn't fulfill on their accounts receivable from the dispensaries. And we just know this across the, I mean, there's so much weed that's been destroyed in the state, kind of like Canada. It's like you look at that. So my hope is that Arizona and these other markets like pay the fuck attention to what happened in Canada, California, and Oregon. The problem is that the state makes all this money off of the licensing fees. The people in Arizona, they make money off of leasing these ATOs or however they're working it out. And so they're making money whether the market wins or loses. I would just hope that there would be a little bit more oversight that this kind of behavior can actually destroy that market, is going to lead to more chaos and kind of undermine the ability for good people to participate in the business. And what you end up getting is not that. You end up getting, you know, another type of group that comes in and kind of take over everything, which is what we want to avoid.
Absolutely. I couldn't say it better, but yeah, no, we gotta like it's all about being open to change and all sorts of stuff. And I really appreciate you guys coming on here. Do you have anything else right before we get off here that you wanted to add? I know you guys may be coming back out here to Arizona sometime to check some more stuff out.
Yeah, we'll be back. We'll be back. And if anyone's interested in lighting, both Jake and I are working for a really great lighting company. And that was the nature of this tour, really, just kind of look at everyone's lighting, see if we can help them out with the lighting. And if they just want to talk shop, or if they want to work with us on any level, I think we're open. Like we don't have like a fixed idea of what we want to do, except we just want to participate and see if anything that we have, any of our resources or network, can be of value to the people in Arizona that are trying to do this the right way and keep small, medium-sized businesses alive.
You're bringing a lot of knowledge to it, and we appreciate that.
Appreciate everybody in Arizona. Everybody that we met was seriously fucking awesome. So we want to see everybody win there.
Dope. Jake, did you have anything?
Can you guys hear me?
Jake.
I'm sorry, it's going out.
You're cutting in and out. You look like Stevie Wonder over there.
You're at like 10 frames a minute.
Yeah.
It's like still motion or still whatever they call
someone's downloading. Yeah, he's got a good peace sign.
Yeah. Okay.
That's perfect. I'm gonna screenshot that.
That's great.
All right. Thank you for that. Thank you for the opportunity to be on your show today. And anytime you guys want us back on, let me know.
Yeah, well, when there's more stuff going on and everything, and I believe a lot of us will start working together. Like I said, on the 27th with the Exhale Society in Tempe, we're going to have a sit down with a bunch of people. You can come out and then learn more about people. Cool. At there's lounge, you can smoke and whatnot. Local growers and artists and stuff, and we'll continue to have events here and there. Next week, I have the helpful content, and then Sentiva 666, a brand ambassador around here and stuff. But thank you guys very much for coming on here. Look forward to future conversations, and I appreciate a lot of knowledge that you dropped on, especially myself. All right. Tap in, smoke up, trip out. Love you all. Deuces.